Food is a crucial part of farming sims, and of course it would be. Your entire livelihood is made by growing crops and raising animals to produce food that nourishes the people around you. To be able to cook and eat is an extremely natural progression from that basic premise. Eating has been in these games from the beginning, right next to the ability to give people food as gifts. Cooking, however, hasn't always been something that you can do. It wasn't incorporated until the game started having inventory systems which let you carry enough different ingredients that you could even think about cooking with them. Our problem with cooking in these games, and the reason why we want to focus on it so heavily for this one, is that even in games where you're able to cook, it's often prohibitively difficult to do. Our names are Stump and Stem, and we're making a farming and cooking sim called Aardvark Agriculture. We're still in the very early stages of development, so we've got a roadmap of sorts here that shows all the basic mechanics we're trying to build to get into testing stages. Today we're going to talk about the cooking part, but before I get into where the game is at, I'd like to talk a little about our philosophy behind cooking mechanics first. Adding cooking felt like a very natural way to give a little more interest to our little game, but that's not the only reason why we turned to this mechanic. There are two very different problems inherent to farming sims that we want to try and tackle with cooking. The first is, of course, the fact that cooking as a mechanic is extremely disconnected from the general gameplay loop that you usually have in these games. You don't usually get access to it until you've upgraded your house once or twice, and that's not something that you can do until you're decently far into the game, and by then you're usually already set in your ways. The second is related to the nature of the food that you produce, which is that it's more of a commodity than it is sustenance. It's very easy to play these games in a way where you look up what the optimal crops are that give you the most payout in return for the cost of seeds, which inevitably leads to massive fields of monocultures. This subject is deep enough to be its own video, so I'll probably dig into that part further when we're ready to talk about trading or something. Today, we're mostly going to focus on how we plan to integrate cooking into the game better. So to start with, why do you cook in games like this? Usually it's a way to make something to eat that restores more of your energy than raw ingredients alone would. The other biggest reason is to make gifts for people. Oftentimes the relationship mechanics are balanced in such a way that any given character's most loved item will be a dish that's particularly difficult to cook. You can also, rarely, cook things to make your ingredients more profitable, but not all games let you sell food for money. These are all fine motivations to cook things, and all things we plan to take into consideration, but you can't do any of them if you're not able to cook in the first place. The problem of not having a kitchen to cook in is an easy fix, just give players one to start with. But that's not the only issue. Players also have to learn how to cook with it. There are certainly plenty of ways that you could make a cooking mechanic in a game, but for simplicity's sake, we're going to divide the techniques between two different styles that the two of us have commonly seen in other games: recipe-based and ingredient-based. Of course, all recipes require ingredients, and all ingredients will make a recipe. The difference here is the order in which the two things are required. Let's take Stardew Valley for example. If you interact with your kitchen, what comes up is a list of things that you can potentially make out of ingredients found in your inventory or fridge. If you want to make a fried egg, all you have to do is make sure that there's an egg somewhere nearby and select the recipe. But, crucially, if you don't already have that recipe, you can never make a fried egg. This is what we call recipe-based cooking. On the other side, we have Harvest Moon Back to Nature, where if you have an egg, you select it inside the cooking menu alongside a frying pan, and the resulting dish will be a fried egg. You even unlock a recipe that the game stores for easy access later. This is ingredient-based cooking. While recipe-based cooking is prohibitive because recipes can be hard to find, unlocked by going to certain places or having high friendship levels with very specific people, ingredient-based cooking isn't perfect either. There are only so many different types of things that you can make in a video game, since the designers have to make a finite list of recipes regardless. So in the ingredient-based cooking style, if you fail to make something that follows a recipe which exists in the game, you get a failed dish, and lose the ingredients that went into it. Both of these things introduce friction, which takes you out of the game flow and makes it less likely that you'll engage with cooking beyond going for 100% completion. In Aardvark Agriculture, cooking is the primary means of progression. The basic gist is that the food that you're always cooking will be traded with the folks in town for seeds and other home goods. There will probably be a daily incentive to deliver simple foods for the sake of growing friendships, but the actual story and gameplay progression will be locked behind your ability to make new and different dishes. To lock new dishes behind finding recipe would be about the same as locking players out of the game entirely with this, so we're using a type of ingredient-based cooking system. The difference is that there won't be failed recipes. Everything will end up making something. It's kind of like how when you cook something in Breath of the Wild, the ingredients will slot into specific categories of food just with unique modifiers. It doesn't matter what kind of mushroom you use, you'll always get a mushroom skewer if they're your only ingredient. Every ingredient will have some kind of flavor profile or other quality to it which affects the resulting dish. When you're given a quest, the NPC will tell you that they want something that involves a specific ingredient, or something that matches a certain flavor, or any combination of those two things. Any further instruction you get will be minimal. With that information, you have to start researching and experimenting with new ingredients to see what you can make until you get something that lines up with their request. Our hope is that this system keeps players interested in cooking and forces them to have more diverse gardens. This, finally, brings us to our cooking interface. All of these concepts were first brought together on paper, with all these notes on what individual things need to do. Drawing out your UI and mechanics, even if it's just a quick doodle, is so much faster than if you tried to take things straight into the engine, and it's great for pointing out blind spots in terms of important things you might have missed, or not even realized you'd need to have. These first sketches Stump made actually wound up working really well, as the current interface in the game looks remarkably similar to them. On the left, we have an inventory window, which is currently populated with a set of test ingredients, since we don't yet have the ability to farm new crops to fill this up. On the right, we have a display of what's selected. You'll be able to select up to 5 of any foods you want, and you can deselect them without interfering with other ingredients. If you haven't selected anything, you'll get a feedback prompt that tells you that you can't cook. Once you've selected everything you want to cook, you just press this button. Right now, what follows when you cook a dish is this little animation, but we've been considering adding a whole cooking minigame instead, both to emphasize the importance of cooking and also to give this very simple game a little bit more going on with it. We're still trying to figure out what we'd like this mechanic to be, so I'll go over it in better detail when we have something hammered out. If you've got ideas, feel free to share them in the comments. I think we're well on the path to making a fun and engaging cooking system, because just pressing all these buttons is already a great time. This makes for 2 out of our 3 types of gameplay started. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm excited to share with you what we've made next time.